Hello, world of YouTube. Thank you for joining me. It is I, Tyler Ellison, and I am here with my wonderful friend, Starshine of the Sassani universe. Pleasure to be with you again, Madam Starshine. How is everything flowing?
Yeah, everything's really good. It's good to see everyone again. Looking forward to talking to our favorite ET. So yeah, super excited.
Absolutely. This is going to be a wonderful transmission. I'm going to be going into the channeling state, and we'll be bringing Ryokah of the Sassani forth, and he's going to be taking your questions. So, for people that are watching this stream live on YouTube, you can type your questions into the YouTube chat, and Starshine's going to be going through those questions, looking for the ones that are the most collectively resonant in terms of guidance and themes of illumination. And we will be taking those questions. So before we get into that, Ryokah is going to be speaking about the upcoming solar eclipse, the partial solar eclipse. It's going to be happening early Saturday morning for those that are in the northern hemisphere, specifically in North America. So we're going to be talking about the powers of this partial solar eclipse in Aries. And we'll also be getting into the upcoming transmission in the contact series that we've been doing, which is going to be taking place April 6th. So mark your calendars. This is a Sunday. This will be in a little over a week, about 9 days from now. So we're encouraging you guys, if you've been loving the transmissions, if you've been really enjoying the deep dives into the different civilizations and how this relates to our human story, then we are so thrilled to invite you guys to the transmission we'll be doing April 6th, and I will let Ryokah talk about that transmission. The title of this is Archetypes of Andromeda, and I'll say no more. I'll let him represent that session because he is going to be speaking at that event, taking your questions, and ultimately leading us through the activation meditation where you get to experience the Andromedan consciousness and you get to receive the sacred mantra that anchors in the Andromedan consciousness into your genetic body of light. And it's this genetic body of light that we got into during the Sasquatch transmission on the equinox, for those of you that were there. Through activating the genetic song within us, we begin to resonate with the collective symphony of existence. There's many different notes, there's many different chords, there's many different songs being played within this multi-level musical experience that we find ourselves in. And in Archetypes of Andromeda, we'll be getting into that unique song, that unique tune of the many diverse forms of consciousness that exist within that system. So without further ado, I'm going to go into the altered state. I'll be bringing him forth, and then we'll get to hear from him directly. So I will see you guys at the end of the transmission. Thank y'all for being here with us today. We thank each and every single one of you for joining us for this ecstatic, co-creative interaction and exchange that we share with one another this day, this here, this now of your collective times. As many of you know, on your date of the 29th, there will be a very powerful, very activating eclipse portal that you all shall be moving through. This energy, this portal, will be summoning forth the power of what you would call the number 11. This is the beam of light that you use to both download and upload spiritual information. The eclipse energy will begin to accumulate as the power of the 28th builds and builds and builds. This is the power of downloading energies into your root chakra. And this is also the power of releasing energies and codes from your root chakra so you can more easily and more clearly summon forth the necessary energies for your journey come the 29th. So these energies that shall be coming into your collective consciousness, they are designed to specifically rewire the neurology, the brain, so that way your personality, your ego consciousness, the mask you wear, can more greatly represent the signature frequency of your true self, your inner being. As many of you know, throughout your journey, different belief systems, different ideologies, different perspectives, different patterns and ways of doing things are sometimes picked up by the personality. And some of these acquired energies and ways of doing things, whilst they may be useful for some time, at a certain point, a being is likely to outgrow such things, just as a snake sheds its skin. So in order for you to receive new, fresh energies, you must be willing to empty your cup. You must be willing to let go of the patterns that you have picked up that no longer serve you, that no longer support you, that no longer create the desired effect. Now, there are many people whom will say, I have no such patterns. I am perfect. I have done all my transformation. I have done all of my shadow work. I am now complete. This is the person whom has the most unconscious spiritual baggage. Their patterns that they have picked up along the way are so unconscious to them that they think those patterns are an expression of the source consciousness they have access. Remember that as long as you have the human mask, you will have some dimension of karma, past energy, that will be transformed and will be integrated by you. Some of this karma is very positive. Some of this karma may be more negative. Some of it may be more neutral. No matter how enlightened you are, you will have these energies to transform. And that is useful because that's how you grow and evolve as a being. A being that is no longer transforming the energies of their, you could say, subconscious archives. These are beings whom cease growing. They cease developing. And if a person ceases to develop in synchrony with the developmental pulse of evolution, the developmental pulse of nature, well, then they stop remaining synchronized with the patterns of life. And this is when the synchronistic flow that they've been riding begins to reflect back to them incongruencies, errors, misalignments. Eventually, they are faced with themselves and they have to look at those patterns. And when I say they have to, what I mean is specifically the following. When negative synchronicities build to a point, eventually the person creating the negative synchronicities wakes themselves up out of the trance. It's like when you get a certain trigger in your dreams and you recognize you're dreaming. Sometimes negative synchronicities will occur to spiritual people to assist them in recognizing that they may actually be involving themselves in what is sometimes referred to as spiritual bypassing, assuming that because one is on the spiritual journey, they no longer have a shadow, they no longer have duality, they no longer have responsibility. And of course, those are egoic projections. So whilst The universe will entertain those views, whilst your higher self will entertain those views. Eventually, your inner being comes a knocking and asks for a certain level of alignment to be created in one's life so they can take those next steps in a smooth, harmonious, and exciting way. So be willing to let go. Be willing to willfully sacrifice that which no longer serves you. Think of things that are eating up your time that you need not be feeding energy into. Think about the ways you have been approaching perhaps yourself or other people that are not giving you the desired effect or result. Think about some of the patterns that you may have with material goods, material items, material resources. Take a look at that which is not flowing in the way you prefer. Identify what the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions are that lead to such situations and be willing to let those go. Should you do this today, you will be greatly detoxifying the root chakra. So as you move through the eclipse portal, going from the 28th to the 29th, you will find that you're able to move through with greater flexibility and fluidity. This eclipse portal that is in Aries represents the new self. It represents the new you, expanding and rising upward from the inner earth chakras, up through the center channel, like the Kundalini serpent. The true self and your original power rises. This is the signal that your crown chakra, your third eye chakra are emanating, and it is drawing this original energy up from the chakras below. And as that energy rises and makes contact with the third eye and the crown, the third eye and crown will resonate with the eclipse portal. New downloads, new realities will be summoned forth. The eclipse portal specifically will be shining into your collective consciousness the energies of future humanity. What you describe as the future Earth, where humanity has blended with different extraterrestrial species and counterparts, it is this Earth and this future version of humanity that shall be communicating with you all during this eclipse portal. You can download the light codes, you can download the energies from this future experience, from this future portion of the timeline. One of the major motivators and energizers of such a blending and hybridization is the collective consciousness that you understand as the Andromedan collective consciousness, which in a certain sense expresses as a star, a unified star, but in a larger sense, the Andromedan collective is made up of many stars that spiral around a galactic center, very similar to what all of you experience in the Milky Way. The Milky Way and Andromeda are set to merge thousands of years upline. It is this merging that allows for multiple dimensional expressions of consciousness to overlay upon one another in a manner that resembles alchemical blending, light and dark, higher and lower, positive and negative, yin and yang, coming together, creating an entirely new experience, an entirely new expression of life. A super galaxy shall be created that represents what you would describe as a galactic yin-yang symbol, a galactic Tai Chi. This is what you are all moving towards. This is what the Andromedan beings are encouraging, not just upline during those times of hybridization, but they are also encouraging this now as you learn about one another, as you learn about the many different dimensions within yourself, as you learn about the many different ways you can interface with reality and the many different creative viewpoints you can use. As you start to explore these things, your DNA begins to resonate with the myriad of perspectives that exist within the creational expression that is existence. And through that synchrony with the perspective of the many, you can experience the perspective of the source. And this is the perspective of that future-based Tai Chi reality where the Milky Way and Andromeda have overlapped. So we invite you all to our upcoming transmission, Archetypes of Andromeda, which shall be taking place on the 6th of April, a Sunday. We thank you for receiving this, and we look forward to continuing to guide you through this process of open contact and ascension of consciousness. We now make ourselves available to you all for the questioning and for the sharing of information, perspective, and energy.
Great. Thank you so much. Happy to see you again, as always.
We are delighted to see you. Thank you for being here and for acting as an anchor for the information.
Great. So let's get started with the first question. So you mentioned the energy of the number 9. Can you speak on what this means for individuals who are born under this vibration, such as those who are born, for instance, on April 9th?
Sure. In terms of the powers of 9, this is a lunar power. It specifically connects to the groin, and it acts as a stimulating numerical frequency for the stored Kundalini energy that is entangled with many dimensions of the lower body, including the reproductive organs, the digestive system, the tailbone, the sacrum. All of these different centers work together to create a unified frequency of energy that you translate as Kundalini. You call it Kundalini, and it's symbolized as a coiled serpent. So remember, the serpent is sensitive to vibration. A snake is able to feel earthquakes happening miles away. It is through your root chakra, it is through your sacral chakra, resonating with 2 primary spheres, the earth and the moon, that ultimately cause the Kundalini serpent to uncoil and unwind. The Kundalini serpent then begins to move up the spine. When the Kundalini is active, that lunar power, that is 9, becomes a Martian power. The Kundalini becomes more fiery when it is in its activated form, when it is being guided up to the crown. So because Kundalini, when activated, takes on this fiery quality, it goes from water as the moon to fire as Mars. It is important that a person who possesses this 9 power, should they explore the Kundalini path, the spiritual path, that they remain emotionally balanced and grounded. 9 is, as we mentioned, the number of the moon. The moon waxes and it wanes. It has a light side and a dark side. So a person who has this power must learn to balance specifically the darkness and light that are connected to the subconscious and the emotional expressions of their being. In order for a person with great emotional power to balance the emotional power, what is needed is that they entertain a higher perspective, which allows for them to see in a truthful way how all experiences, no matter how dark, no matter how light, have the capacity and the ability to assist them and serve them in some way, in some manner. Remember, no matter what you experience, no matter how dark, no matter how light, if you remove your entanglement, your personal entanglement with that situation, and you zoom out, you will be able to see some positive reason, some good reason for why that thing has happened. It is only when an individual is too wrapped up in the happenings of a thing that they cannot remove themselves from the viewpoint of why that situation is a problem or why it's a bad thing or how it hurt them. But if a person can disentangle and zoom out, any situation can be interpreted, can be utilized in a positive way. So for those who have this 9 power, for those who have this Kundalini power, developing that viewpoint, which is the viewpoint of the third eye and heart unified, will greatly serve them. It will greatly assist them, and it will ensure that that serpent power, as it rises, does not create some type of outburst that can give rise to a chaotic experience or a unpreferred experience. So when the emotions are balanced, when the light and dark energies are balanced, the serpent is able to easily, in a smooth and balanced way, rise up the spine. But if you have too much light or too much dark, it's like that serpent gets pulled to the left or it gets pulled to the right. So balance is essential, being that which can hold light in one hand, dark in another. In order to do that, you have to be willing to validate both light and dark. You must be willing to see how they both serve and support one another, and how they serve and support not just you, but the entirety of the existence. When you can validate light and dark in such a way, your experience of light and dark will turn into pure play.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Of course. Up next, can you speak on the recent discoveries underneath the pyramids in Egypt?
Certainly. Keep in mind, what has been discovered underneath the pyramids will not be the only discovered. As this technology is utilized during the evaluation of other ancient sites, you will find additional structures. Keep in mind that when we talk about the inner earth, there are certain dimensions of inner earth that are extra dimensional. It's like the astral plane, what you call that imagination realm, but physicalized, occupying a type of in-between multi-dimensional space. There are other dimensions of inner earth that represent the previous civilizations that your civilization is literally built on top of. You must remember that just like a snake, the earth sheds its skin. So one generation is upon the next, upon the next, upon the next, upon the next. So the earth grows and consumes literally the previous civilizations, and the earth in that way cycles the upper layers of its surface, and it pulls those older civilizations down, and it breaks down many of the remnants of certain civilizations and the evidences of their presence. But there are certain structures that are made to withstand this process. There are certain civilizational lineages that built their technologies and their temples and their cities in such a way that they are immune to this process. These are the ancient civilizations that went through an ascension. Not all members of the society ascended, but many of them did. Those that remained traveled throughout the planet, sharing their ways, sharing their methods with the other factions of the population globally, whom were perhaps less advanced or had less of these ascension-based and technological opportunities. So, the technologies that are being detected, the structures that are being detected beneath the Great Pyramid, these are technological structural remnants of the civilization that shared information, energy, technology, and understandings with the ancient beings that you call the ancient Egyptians, whom occupied the lands of Chem. Keep in mind, Atlantis, before the fall, sent people out to the many corners of the earth to transmit information, energy, and knowledge, and to also spread the Atlantean culture. Atlantis had the capacity that you call the capacity of aviation. They were able, through their technologies, to create things similar to airplanes, to create things similar to what you call spacecraft. These craft had the ability to travel within physical reality, but they also possessed the ability to shift their frequency, bringing them into other dimensional forms of expression. This allowed for the Atlanteans to be spacefaring. It also allowed for them to be able to travel throughout the air. But Atlantis also utilized these transmedium vehicles to be able to descend deep into the earth. And they utilized a variety of different underground networks and tunnels to actually go into the planet. Once inside the planet, they worked with the species much older than them. These are hybrid species. Many of them resemble what you now understand to be extraterrestrial beings. Some of them appear in the form, in the manner that is similar to what you call the Greys. Some of them appear in the form, in the manner that is similar to what you call reptilians. The Atlantean beings were able to make contact with many of these species. They were able to form alliances with these species. They formed bases and colonies within the Earth, and they were able to make contact not just with some of these exotic forms of ancient species, but other variations of humanity, whom instead of traveling to the surface, colonizing and occupying the surface, remained deep in the earth. Some of the original Garden of Edens were not on your planet's surface. Many of them were lunar, and many of them exist within the inner Earth matrix. So you have some versions of humanity that came out of the Earth and occupied the surface, but you have other factions of humanity that remained within the Earth. So the Atlanteans were able to make contact with both of them, both of these groups, through their ability to descend into the Earth, and of course through their ability to fly and travel from one location to another. So you are finding evidence of civilizations much older, and you will find evidence for technologies that currently surpass what you think is possible. How you interpret all of that, this will be up to your scientists and their ability to make sense of what they're seeing. But nevertheless, these are some of the things that shall be revealed, not just with Egypt, but with other locations as well. Eyes on Turkey in terms of what is beneath the earth.
All right, we'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So there's another Egypt-related question. What was their connection to cats, and why were they so sacred to them?
Remember, the Egyptian word for cat in many ways sounds like what you describe as the cat that is your household companion. But this Egyptian word cat does not mean household feline companion. That word cat in Egyptian is a reference to the body specifically. The Egyptians were aware of the following idea. You become like those whom you hang out with. In order for one to truly master their lower self, their animal self, their cat, their body, what was needed is that they had a helpful and healthy example of lower self energy to emulate. The feline, the cat, the domestic cat, was seen as a wonderful example of a lower self reflection. For the domesticated cat, house cat in that sense, is a diminutive form of the greater cats, the panthers, the lions, the jaguars, these types of greater cats. It possesses a connection to that power, but it is more contained. And it takes all that power and it turns it into playfulness, intelligence, and the ability to sense intuitively what is happening in the energetic level of the environment. So through the ancient Egyptians forming this playful, companion-based relationship with the cats, a sacred relationship with the cats, they were able to mirror that relationship with their own bodies and with their own inner animal psychology. And this is one of the major reasons why the cat was so greatly respected. Now, this is only one dimension of the explanation. You must keep in mind that there are many hybrid forms of consciousness that exist with very unique body types. Some of the hybrid beings that guided humanity, especially in ancient times, and not just humanity, but other species, resemble what you would consider to be lion-headed humans. So the cat, in addition to being a symbol of contained power, is also seen as a symbol of ancient royalty. So through emulating the cat, one can connect to that royal lineage, which ultimately has to do with the archetypal symbolism behind the creation of different planetary species and the corresponding societies and civilizations connected to such species.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Up next, did Jesus have a wife and kids?
Yes. So, with Yeshua, it is important to keep the following thing in mind. As soon as I describe Yeshua in one reality, the multiple versions of Yeshua that exist upon the many earths begin to activate. Because you must remember, the being that you call Yeshua exists as an individual expression of a collective consciousness that manifests on multiple earths. This is why he's an ascended master. An ascended master does not just ascend on one earth. They ascend on every version of earth that they exist upon. That is why many of them are seen as near perfect in terms of their alignment with self. Because not only are they choosing to align, but the alternate versions of them on their versions of Earth are also choosing to align. And through all of those counterpart expressions of being choosing alignment, a collective ascension across many Earths can happen. And this then combines as an energy to give rise to what you describe as ascended master consciousness. So this is not just the case with Yeshua. So I am giving this as a preface because what I am about to say can both be validated by certain historical records and can be apparently invalidated by other ones. So I say this for those whom are more scholarly and whom are more religiously minded, who may hear this. And through this preface, they can understand why there is evidence for both. The first thing I will say is this: many of the religious texts are meant to be interpreted as dream symbolism rather than interpreted literally. Now, this does not mean that every dimension of the text is meant to be interpreted in a dream way, for the text is multidimensional. You have portions of the text that are meant to be interpreted literally. You have other dimensions of the text that are meant to reflect certain meanings that are only revealed when the person meditates upon the text. You have other dimensions of the text that contain new teachings. And if the person internalizes the texts, new teachings, new understandings are developed. So you have to keep this in mind with many of the religious texts that exist. This is not just the case in Christianity. This is the case in many religious texts across many religious expressions of culture. So internally, Christ had a wife. Christ had a beloved. Remember, you all have a male and female self. You all have an inner self. You all have an outer self. When the inner and outer self come together, and you unify yourself, you give rise to a magical being within, and that is the child of light that you are. You take that child of light that you eternally are, and you birth it within your being through integrating and blending the inner and outer expressions of consciousness that you possess, which can be seen as male and female. And oftentimes in meditations, these inner and outer expressions of self are perceived and are personified in such a way. So In the versions of Earth where Christ is documented as having no wife, no children, and there's evidence supporting this, this is where his process was done specifically internally. He worked with those inner energies to create his child of light within, and it is that which allowed for him to actually rise from the dead. In other versions of Earth, this inner practice was blended with an outer beloved. And there are many schools of thought that talk about this: the Mary Magdalene mysteries, the Isis mysteries, the Sophia mysteries. These are all a reference to this. So you will find evidence for both. But the answer is clear. Yes, this is why that was our first answer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Up next, when we meditate and our eyes water, why does this happen? Is there something else going on besides detoxing?
Well, you're ultimately connecting with the realm of the subconscious. So do keep in mind, the tears, yes, can be detoxifying energies, but in many ways, through the production of tears, the element of water is brought into your visual experience. Remember, the eyes have a fire to them. They have a glow to them. You talk about the life in someone's eyes. Yes, this means there's light. So the eyes project a fire. That fire is connected to the yang, the fire of the liver. That fire is connected to the shen, the spirit of your heart. And when you spiritually activate the eyes in a type of meditative gaze or trance, that fire reaches the highest level of frequency it can reach. And when fire's at its hottest, what color does it turn? Blue, color for water. So tears can be produced as a side effect of raising the frequency and activating the spiritual potency and power of the visual organs and structures.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you share more about the soul of Buddha and what themes he was exploring?
We'll make this the final question. In terms of the Buddha and the themes he was exploring, well, all you have to do is do a quick Google search on Buddhism, and you'll see the major themes he was exploring. The Eightfold Path is very much connected to the Buddhist way. The Eightfold Path is in many ways based upon the 8 limbs or the 8 branches of yoga. The 8 limbs, the 8 branches of yoga are connected to the 8 points of the compass and the magical Eastern symbol that is octagonal in nature. Some of you will know what I'm referencing here. But it is this 8-fold way, this 8-fold approach, this 8-fold path that the Buddha was standing upon. The Buddha utilized many different techniques, many different methods and schools of thought to come to the realizations that he came to. But you must remember, what you call the Buddha is not one being. As I had just mentioned with Yeshua, there are many expressions of the being that you call the Buddha, and these other versions exist on many other expressions of Earth. So this historical character that you call the Buddha, he's not one being, many beings, just like your Yeshua. And the Buddha ultimately represents a level of consciousness that one can reach as a side effect of integrating those 8 limbs and ultimately those 8 virtues or areas of focus. Through this type of cultivation, a structure, a harmonious structure within the self is produced. And that structure is then ultimately released. And the structure supports the meditator in then experiencing non-attachment, letting go, feeling the collective oneness, the resonance with all things. It is this level of consciousness that the Buddha represents. Because when your cup is empty, it can then be filled. When you think you know everything, I'm full of spiritual wisdom, I'm full of information, I'm full of experience. When you think you know everything, you become blind. You can't see. You can't experience life clearly. Everything has to come through a filter of processing. So the eightfold path and the 8 limbs are meant to produce within one's mind the neurological structures, the energetic structures that allow for an individual to center themselves, to expand themselves, and to easily release attachment and aversion and ignorance. So from these structures of consciousness, what are called the 3 poisons or the 3 fires can be extinguished. Enlightenment means to be extinguished. It's to put the fire out. So these 3 fires are extinguished from these structures. And when those 3 fires are extinguished, then the individual can experience that total resonance. But that's not the highest level. You must remember this. The Buddha represents a level all beings must pass through, but it is not a final destination. We thank you for your question.
Thank you. So yeah, I guess that was all for today for now.
That is all for today. We thank you all for the wonderful questions you have contributed and that you have shared to this Q&A and with all of us. We thank you for receiving the answers and the information. We look forward to seeing you all at the upcoming transmission, Archetypes of Andromeda, and we are wishing you all a delightful and expansive solar eclipse portal. And we remind you, even if you are living in an area that cannot see the eclipse, you can tune into any celestial happening. You are not bound by your body or your frequency of space or time. Just as you can remember what it was like to be young, and just as you can remember those environments you explored when you were young, you can take that same ability and connect to any location on your planet, any location in your universe, at any time. So have fun connecting to these powers, and we wish you all a good day, a good here, a good now, and a wonderful waking dream. Okay, everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you guys had a great, great time. That was a lot of fun for me, and I'm going to land the ship, so to say. Enjoy the energy, everyone. I hope you're having a great Friday. Please feel free to carry this momentum and power into the weekend. And for those of you that are going to be with me on Monday for the Patreon transmission, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys then for the eternal celebration. So I'll see Patreon folks on Monday, and everyone else, I'll see you guys soon, and I'll see you at the event, Archetypes of Andromeda. So be well, my friends, and have a glorious, glorious start.